All right, welcome back to the RunThrough Trails podcast for episode number 10. Me and Lewis are just having a little catch up because I feel like we've both been out of the country for an eternity and we haven't done a regular episode for a while. I think the last one that we sat down and did was me and Gemma, and then we've had the athlete interviews and a few ones that we've hosted on the New Levels channels that we've recorded out in Chamonix and in Morzine. So yeah, how is it being back in the UK, mate? How are things?
A lot different in terms of the view. Yeah, we were saying our backdrop is a lot different for the recording of this podcast. But it's good to be back as well. You know, I was away for nearly 5 weeks in the end, which was amazing. And don't get me wrong, I know we both say we always have a big come down after these events. And I definitely did. You know, it was back to reality with a bang. And it's been building up for so long, hasn't it, as well, you know, from kind of November time last year. So it was amazing. But it is good to be back in routine. And we seem to have brought the weather back with us as well, which is always nice.
Yeah, it's brightening up a little bit. I mean, it's funny you say that. It's that post-race kind of come down, which I haven't experienced fully this time because I didn't really finish the race. So it's been a different kind of mix of emotions. But one of the things that we did do over the last few weeks was the first ever runner retreat trail camp based in Morzine. We've obviously done it in the Peak District before. But one of the guys in the group chat earlier this week put a comment in there saying something like, I feel like I'm on a post-race come down after coming back from the trip. I had such a good time. I'm back home, normal routine. I'm just on a bit of a downer. I'm not feeling great. And it's interesting how it affects you that way.
It's weird, isn't it? Because whether it's a training trip, a holiday, whether it's a race, I think when you've been building up to something, you have such a good time out there, you come back and it's almost like the shock of going back to reality. And I was interested to see how you'd felt after UTMB, because I still feel like, and I said this to people who've asked, I felt like that build up to UTMB where we were in the chalet and we're all living together, cooking well, eating well, and just a really nice atmosphere. I really enjoyed that. Like I really did. The race was amazing and UTMB week was incredible, but there was still definitely like a bit of a come down just from that, because I really enjoyed the people that we were with and the time we spent together. So I think it's a combination of things, but I totally appreciate from your perspective, you've probably just been mind on, I want to get fixed and back running as quickly as I possibly can.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. I mean, we had an amazing time as well, and I think that's what made it so much easier to kind of accept not finishing and not getting I don't even want to say the result that I wanted, because obviously you always want to have a good result, but you got to realize realistically you can't always have good results. And the number of races in your entire lifetime where everything comes together, you're fit, you're healthy, all the prep's been perfect, you get the right conditions, you feel good on the day, you're motivated, everything goes smoothly, and you have the performance of a lifetime. It's called that for a reason, because it happens like once or twice in your life. So to have not been able to kind of execute that and get the result I wanted is obviously difficult. And to not finish for the first time was like a weird feeling, because there's mental kind of games that come around with that, where then you start to almost second guess yourself of like, oh, well, next time it gets hard, am I gonna think about stopping then, because now I've kind of done it once. But it's all part of the game. It's something that I hadn't experienced and something that I can kind of learn from and move on. But I think being out there for so long and having it tied in with so many other experiences, with you racing, with Gemma's race, with coming out and visiting, with obviously having Nicola and Amelia, all the family came out, your parents, Gemma, my parents, it was mental. Justin was there, Jamie was there, who wasn't there? The whole world was there. It softened the blow. Yeah, it was just like an amazing trip, and the race was one small piece, so it makes it a bit less hard to stomach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think when on the subject of like dropping out of the race, I think for you, I said straight away when I heard you on the phone to Nicola when you'd mentioned that you dropped out, I just said to her straight away, tell him he's made the right call, because I think there's a big difference when somebody drops out because it's getting hard and when somebody drops out because they can't physically perform their best on the day. And that's what happened with you. You were just in so much physical pain from the injury that you had going into it that it was just impacting your race and having such a significant impact. You were probably going to do long-term damage as well. You'd already got like the best part of 3.5 to 4 hours into the race, which is mad in itself. And we just knew that that descent, that was the longest descent of the race. And if you couldn't run that as well as you usually could, then you were basically cutting your legs off, because that's the best part of your race. So it was a sensible call, but I do understand people will be listening here thinking, yeah, it does have a psychological impact when you potentially step off. But I still do believe it was the right call to do that. And there's still a lot of positives to take from it as well, which I'm sure we'll touch on over the course of this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've talked a lot in the past, probably maybe not on the podcast, but in person for sure. And I don't know if this is controversial or not, but there's like this kind of attitude, especially in trail running, and I feel like even more so in longer distance. I may be wrong, who knows, like whatever, but I don't want to overthink what I'm saying too much, where there's almost like this level of respect and glory put on finishing by all means. And you've got elite athletes who are getting to 50-mile in a 100-mile race. They're having an awful day. They've tried to turn it around. They've done everything they can. It isn't turning around. Maybe they've got a bit of a niggle. Maybe they're having stomach problems, whatever. And it's almost this thing of like, but I'm, death before DNF. I'm just going to march it into the finish. I'm going to walk and jog and batter myself. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that both of our opinions are kind of aligned in the sense of like, if you're in a race for performance, yeah, you don't want to step off every time you're not having a perfect day, because that's not a good mindset to have. But if you're having a disastrous day and you might be injured and it's just all falling apart, why put your body through that extra 2, 3, 4 hours of damage where it's just going to take longer to recover when you're going to gain nothing from it other than a result which is not even in the same stratosphere of what you hoped for, and you might just be hurting yourself.
Yeah, it's quite simple for me, really. I think when the risk to reward ratio is high, when you're putting more risk than there is potential reward, then I think you've got to step off, whether that's an injury, which it is for a lot of people, and they're putting themselves at long-term risk, or whether it's a health problem that they've got going on, whether it's that they're not stomaching things, they may be throwing up, which we saw a lot in the main UTMB race this year, particularly on the men's side. Then again, that can have potential health detriments, and that can potentially damage you long term. So I think you've got to weigh that up, and you've got to make those decisions on the spot, which is difficult. But that's where you've got to have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D up your sleeve. And if you've tried plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D, and none of them are working, like, you've got to tell yourself, well, actually, this is probably right to step off. And we know that you tried everything. You tried slowing down, you tried speeding up, you tried hiking faster, running faster, you tried descending slower, you tried everything. It was just a case of, you know what, it's not just my day, I'm not just performing well, it's like, I'm actually hurt here, and I'm now being a little bit silly.
Definitely, like towards the top of that climb, when I'd already decided that I was going to drop, the one thing that made me feel the most comfortable with it was the fact that I was still on target split. Like I came through Calderbalm on schedule for what we'd wanted, which on a regular day feeling good would be a success. And then it was all the race starts here, run this descent fast, this is where you're going to kick it on, this is where you're going to catch everyone up. I was making up places at every aid station. You look at it statistically, like it was all working, but I just knew my legs weren't working. And like hamstrings fully cramping, knee destroyed, like only going to do damage. And I think going up the climb, it felt less like there was less impact and like there was less risk. And I figured I may as well make it to the top. But the idea of doing that full descent, that compromised is just, it made no sense at all. Even with Jamie shoving the camera in my face saying, "You look amazing, you're doing so well." Immediately having to say, "I'm dropping, mate. I've already decided." But anyway, no, it's good. It was a really good learning experience for me, and like the sort of obstruction in your path becomes the path, and I suppose you just learn what you can from it, apply that to next time, and there's a lot we can take away. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today, mate, because we talked a lot about the race from my point of view as like an athlete and a runner and all the training and the build up. But I know we're beyond your 1 year sort of like trail running focus anniversary, but it's been about a year, just over a year. And obviously we've just passed my big A goal, Gemma's big A goal, and kind of your big A goal as a coach with the UTMB finals. So wanted to touch on some of the stuff you've taken away from that experience and some of the things that you've learned, because obviously you were involved with the ETC race on the Tuesday, so you took part in that, partly as a race from an athlete point of view and a performance point of view. I know you wanted to give that a good go, but also to see what you could learn from that. So let's start with that. Let's go chronologically. Like, what were your takeaways from ETC as both a runner and a coach?
ETC, an interesting race. Knew it was going to be hard from the moment I entered it. The reason I do enter these races, as you quite rightly pointed out, is to learn a little bit more. I feel like I really do learn on the job. if I put myself in those situations, I get a feel for what the courses feel like, what the terrain feels like, and also the competition as well. It's good for me, particularly around Gemma's standard. You know, I'm operating at the kind of the elite end of the women's field. I'm in the mix with the top 3 or 4 women, so it gives me a really good idea of what they're good at, what they're potentially a little bit not worse at, because they're good at pretty much everything, but some, maybe where their weaker areas are. And I really feel that helps me as a coach. I guess my biggest takeaway from the ETC was don't go through the Mont Blanc tunnel because it's busy on race day. Cormier is a brilliant spot and it's beautiful, but it is a nightmare to get there to and from. So if you're going to do ETC in the future, I would recommend staying in Cormier. That's my first takeaway. And that does play a part, right? Because, you know, sitting in the car for 2.5 hours to get to your race when you're expecting it to take 45 minutes, it has a big impact. So you've got to be aware of these type of things. Little details go a long way on race day. The other big takeaway for me is that, yes, I'm a good descender and I can match pretty much anybody in that field down the descent looking at the Strava segments. But climbing, I'm still way off. You know, I'm losing minutes on the climb to the elite women. I'm losing more time to the elite men. And it's just something that we need to become better at because we've not done it and it's going to take a few years. It's not going to be a quick fix. We need to get stronger. We need to get faster. We need to get better at hiking. And we also need to be better at changing the rhythm of how we hike and run. And I guess that was my biggest learning, was that they climb super, super fast, especially in those short races. But flipping this back to you, James, I think we both said the same thing. It's not just in the shorter races where we notice that. It's also in the 50K. They're just very good and conditioned at climbing well.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at some of those splits, specifically Eli's climb from Triant up to the Col de Balme, which was just like blistering when he dropped Remy and took the lead, and subsequently had an absolute nightmare at the finish. But still, that climb was ridiculous. And then Poupy on Flagère, same as last year. Just what a monster! Like that's his section, isn't it? Saving it for that climb, and yeah, the pace those guys are climbing those sections of the course in those conditions, in that heat, at that point in the race, after having already run those types of splits, is it's like a world away from where we are, for a number of different reasons, which we've talked about quite a bit already this year. Like after the uphill trial, I know we talked about that when we got Keswick, and that I just got absolutely annihilated, and we took a step back and thought, this gap's huge. Like there's so much work to do here. So it just confirms that. But I think what we can say is even, I mean, you'll know more about Gemma's splits and stuff like that, and we can look at that briefly. But for me, like the rate that I was climbing at, compromised in like really a pretty rubbish race for me, was still massively improved. And like training's not been consistent, didn't have any sort of taper session, any training going into the race, was concerned about my knee, all these like issues. But even beyond that, I was still climbing better than I have ever. So that's a silver lining for sure.
Yeah, and in relation to that, like relative to the people you're around in the race, and this was my biggest takeaway from both yourself and Gemma, relative to those people you are competing against, you are actually adequate. You're certainly on par with the people around you in terms of your climbing speed, if not slightly better, particularly for Gemma. I looked at some of the segments and she was actually stronger on the climbs than the people she finishes around. However, if what we're talking about here is if you want to make that top 10, that's where we see the gap. And that's what I'm looking at is, okay, well, there is a little bit of a gap there between how fast the top 10 are climbing compared to how fast yourself and Gemma are climbing. And it's not as big as it was. We've got to say that. It's definitely improved, but there's still some work to do. And as I say, you can't do everything at once. But what I did take away was that Gemma's last mile split was actually based off Strava segments, because that's all we can go off for that mile split. She was the second fastest female in the race, finishing into Chamonix, which shows me that pacing was good. If anything, she might have had a little bit too much left, but she's certainly conditioned, and that's the longest race she's ever done. She ran for 6 hours and 56 minutes, around that sort of time, and she's still finishing with a 5:18 mile into Chamonix, which is like rapid. Now, I'm not saying that mile's entirely correct. It's on Strava. But it's all relative. It was the second fastest mile into Chamonix in that race, which, is absolutely incredible. So we got a lot right. There's still a lot to improve on. But there was some big takeaways as well, which is, it's all promising for the future, I think, is the best way to describe it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's cool. It's like for the athlete, the race is the celebration, it's the reward at the end of it. It shouldn't be seen as like the big scary kind of face the big boss at the end of the level type of thing. It's more the culmination of all the hard work and the training, which then you get to like see where you're at. And from a coach's point of view, it's the final exam, isn't it? Like you get to put all these little pieces in place, do all this training with Gemma. I mean, she's your wife, you're with her every single day. You guys are talking about it all the time, all the different factors. You're seeing how she's feeling about it on a daily basis. You're doing a lot of her sessions with her as well. So you couldn't be more plugged into where she's at, and then having your projection of what you expected her to do and the split she was going to run and how she would perform and feel at different points on the course, and then having actually executed that race pretty much to plan, had a great result, everything gone really smoothly. She's left it with a load of confidence, which was always going to be a big thing. And coming away from it, like you said, and I know she said the same on a social media post recently, like probably was a bit conservative and had a little bit more to give. But just wanted to get that first one under the belt and kind of build on it. So yeah, I mean, that's an ideal thing, really, isn't it? To hit the goal result and still have a bit in reserve is unusual. So that bodes really well. It's obviously working.
Yeah, and I think that was another big takeaway for me. And I know we had this discussion quite quickly after. Was we did put in place conservative splits for you both, because we knew it was going to be the longest race, if not one of the longest races you've both done. Yours very close to Annecy, of course, at the Europeans. But we also felt like our pacing strategy was solid. I think one of my big learnings is, particularly early on in that 50Ks, the zone that you're in is kind of easy to steady early on, because it has to be, because you're going to be running for 6 hours. But you can probably run maybe a minute or two quicker and still be in that same sort of zone early on in the race. And I think that was one of my big takeaways, was don't be afraid to go maybe a minute or so quick. I'm not saying go out like really hard, but actually if it is still in that zone and we're looking at heart rate data and that type of stuff, then we say, well, actually it's still falling in that zone. So you can probably get a minute or so there potentially for the same cost. So that was a big takeaway for me as a coach. But the other thing, as you say, was like Gemma coming away and she ran within 2 minutes of what I predicted, which is amazing. And you were within that as well at Col de Balme. I have no doubt you'd have ran the time that we were aiming for. And that was kind of the big A goal. But I think what I was surprised at was how far that was down the field comparative to 2022 for the same time on the same course, whereby Gemma would have finished, I think, 15th or 16th in 2022. She finished 26th this time. And I'd calculated that thinking, well, if she runs that, that's a brilliant run. She'll probably be in the top 20. It's a lot deeper now, especially on the women's side. That's massively shifted. We were seeing the participation rates increase, which is great. But even on the men's side, I think Robbie Simpson's a good example. He wasn't far off what he ran in 2022. He was podium then. He's now 10th. Like, it's just getting so strong.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like the times are crazy, and the depth at the top especially is ridiculous, and seemingly more so in the shorter distances. Like OCC, both fields were just insane. I know we did our little pre-race analysis and didn't get many of our predictions correct, but we talked a lot about Eli in the year leading up, so I'm going to give us that one.
Yeah, I got all three women, and an interesting stat actually on the women's side, which backs up your point here. So the 50K from the year before, the winner last year was Tony McCann. She won the CCC this year. Yeah. Second place was Katie Scheid. She won UTMB. Third place was Miao Yao. She won OCC. So last year's 50K podium won every UTMB race this year, which is so impressive.
Wow. Yeah, that is interesting, eh? That is interesting. Okay, cool. Well, perfect. So before we move off the UTMB stuff, I know that we looked a lot like we were competing in. Well, you raced in ETC, then me and Gemma raced on the Thursday at OCC, but then we had CCC and UTMB over the weekend, and we were just in full like holiday mode, relax mode, and you guys were straight back out on the trails. I know partly because you want to go and recce some bits of the route for different reasons that we don't need to really get into, but also just to see some of these like best runners in the world competing at the biggest event in the world, because why would you not want to see that? But we also did a lot of analysis of splits and rates and timings and positions, and we're not going to dive too deep into it. To be honest, there's probably a whole podcast in there. Well, there's hours of podcasting in and of itself. But if you had to summarize your kind of maybe a couple of key points that you learned from looking at all the races as a whole across UTMB, CCC, OCC, men and women, aside from me and Gemma specifically, what were some trends that you saw in people who had good performances, and what were a couple of interesting like takeaways that you didn't necessarily expect to see that you did see after the races?
I think one of the key words you've mentioned there is trends. People who are running with a strategy, and that strategy has been picked apart through trends that they've seen on that course over the years previously. They then apply that trend to their strategy, and they know that it is kind of a winning strategy, or certainly a good strategy to implement on the day. I think people who aren't going in with a strategy, I think you're just setting yourself up to fail. I think, I'd describe it as, you're throwing dart at a dartboard with a blindfold on. You're just hoping that it sticks. You're hoping you hit the right spot. I think you've got to have a strategy that is suited to you and plays into your strengths, but it's also got to be set up for the course as well. It's very technical out there. That was one of my big observations. It's a lot more technical, particularly on the CCC and the UTMB courses. The 50K that you and Gemma did is fast. It's a fast course, and it's very runnable. And I think that's why it makes it super competitive, and it's brilliant. But yeah, my biggest takeaway is probably that people who aren't running to a strategy, they're just getting caught up in other people's races, going out too fast, maybe not think about what they're doing. It really amazed me as well how many people said afterwards, oh yeah, it was hotter than I thought it was going to be, and I didn't really have a heat strategy in place. Like, what? That's just mental. Like, that's the basic stuff that you should be discussing with your coach, or at least having a thought behind it. I guess that leads to my third point is, there's a lot of people who sometimes aren't coached, so they maybe don't know who to turn to, and some people have teams around them now, and I feel like they are performing really well because they've got all the information they need. They do have a strategy, and it's a lot different to things like track running and road running, where it's just like your strategy is often, I'm going to go out and hit these splits. It's a totally different ball game, and that is what I love about it. I know you do as well, because we're kind of into the same sort of things, and we love analysing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool in a load of different ways. One, because it's just interesting to analyze it and see how it all plays out, and try and almost like turn it into a formula, which is kind of like what we're trying to do. And I think you pretty much can do. Like any established sport has got like endless analysis and statistics attached, and a lot of it probably comes as well from like gambling or like commentary analysis and post game analysis, whether it's football or like whatever it would be. But you can apply that same thought process to trail running, and there are so many variables and so many factors. It might seem too complex to be able to do that, but the trends are pretty clear. And actually, there's a few key basics that you just touched on: having a strategy, like considering factors like weather, nutrition, and probably not going in to race the race. I feel like the more I hear that phrase, the less success I see, as opposed
Yeah,
to
I
I've got a
agree.
plan, I know the race that I'm going to run, I'm going to stick to it and be confident in it, because I know that if I execute it in this way, I'm still going to finish up in the position that I want to finish in. But yeah, no, it is interesting. There's so many varied ways of going about it. So the last point that you mentioned there about a lot of like the best athletes in the world competing at these events maybe not being coached, which I know comes as quite a surprise to you. Obviously, you're a coach, you run a coaching business, but also you've been an athlete for many years, and in like track running, road running, every top athlete is coached, or at least maybe I'm not right in saying that, but I'd imagine the vast majority, right, a higher
Yeah,
percent.
definitely.
Um, so then that leads us on to the next thing that I was actually going to ask you about, because I've seen on your socials over the last few days that you're looking to potentially recruit a few more athletes. Was that partly the impetus of thinking, look, there's all these people, they've got so much potential, I can help them, I'm going to reach out and get involved with some people? Like, what's your plan around that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess I came away from Chamonix like on a bit of a high because of the week itself, and certainly with Gemma's performance, I think she exceeded her own expectations. I honestly thought there was something like that in there. You and I had spoken about that privately away from her, and I think I got it about spot on where I thought how she would run. I was obviously gutted for you because I know what you could have achieved, and if anything, I was a bit gutted with your performance because I seen what you did with a broken body, and that just got me a little bit more excited. And I just thought, oh God, like if only, if only. But that adds to the excitement for the future. But then I think for me, the biggest kind of, a bit of a come down was that realizing next year Gemma's got her automatic qualification for UTMB. You're going to focus on different things, and I just thought, I'm going to go to UTMB at the moment with one athlete who's on the elite start list. And I really do think I can help a lot of people who are on that elite start list or just, sub-elite. And my big takeaway from a coaching perspective was that I might be relatively unknown in the trail running world, comparative to the track world and the road running world, especially when it comes to coaching. But I believe that my skills are transferable. And if anything, I'm spending a lot more time and detail on my athletes than maybe other coaches are. So I feel like I can add a lot to some people's performances. And I want to be part of those as well. And I love it. And I love being there. So off the back of UTMB, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put out a post and just see who might be interested, who is out there, who's not coached, who maybe is thinking about coaching. And I've had quite a nice response. 8 or 9 athletes have already applied. There's more saying that they're going to apply. I'm going to be speaking to them over the next couple of weeks and having a look at who potentially fits well. And if I can't help them personally, then maybe New Levels Coaching can help them. And it might be right for them to be with another coach. So that's where we are. And that's where my mindset is. But yeah, a bit like you, James, like I'm all in with this type of stuff. Like we had that conversation many a times, you and I. I'm all in, I'm committed, and I want people on those podiums at UTMB. Like that's my goal. It still is my goal.
Totally. So what are you, to summarize, like if someone's listening and thinking, okay, that sounds cool, what are you offering? How have you structured it? What have you kind of put out there?
So I'm offering my time firstly, so coaching for free for the elites. Obviously, I have a online coaching business, which is a paid service, and anybody who comes through that New Levels Coaching business platform will generally pay for coaching. I now have a slightly reduced fee for people who are maybe sub-elite. So I speak to those people and I bring them on if I would like to work with them, just to try and help them with those costs. But with this, I'm offering my time for free to say, look, that you will get the coaching and my time and attention free of charge. That gives them access to Final Surge, which is the platform I use where I can analyze all their training. It also gives them access to me to potentially go on things like training camps with them. As you'll know, I spend a lot of time with yourself and Gemma going out to places and traveling to races, which again, I generally pay for out of my own money. And I just think it's a really good environment to be in with those athletes. So there's that potential as well. But also we have really good partners as well at New Levels Coaching, partners like Precision Hydration, and we might be partnering with some other companies, which I won't say just yet. And there's the potential that they get discounted rates with those potential nutrition partners or other partners, or maybe some free things as well, which is great. And then there's the run-through side. So I know the RunThrough Trails director, and it might be that you say, well, let's get them in races, and then all of a sudden they're in races and competing, and there's free entries to races. Or it might the kit, we have New Levels Coaching kit, which is partnered with RunThrough, so I can get kit for them for free. So all these things that can potentially package together to create that bit more of an elite team, and really help them to develop. But I think the biggest thing for me is that I can give them my care and attention, that I feel like that's where I add a lot to people. And I can give them my personality, and I can be around them. So yeah, that's kind of the package that I'm personally offering, and it is a personal goal for me as well. There's something selfish about that too, and I don't mind admitting that. I want to be a great coach. I want to see people on the podium, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's a big part of what you want to do. Your business caters to runners of all abilities at every single level. You've got an amazing team of coaches who can do all of that stuff. But like you say, part of what you're interested in is the elite end of the sport, and always has been. And applying that now to trail running just makes all the sense in the world. And I think if you are out there listening to this and you're on that kind of cusp of elite, sub-elite, or maybe you're just a full-blown elite, almost full-time trail runner who just doesn't have a coach, like, you won't find a better person to reach out to and communicate with. So yeah, no, it's exciting. I mean, probably means I get some training partners too. So that sounds
Yeah,
nice.
well, that's the aim. It's like, we go, but we're going to Gran Canaria in February, and I'm like really excited already looking at that. I know you're going to be there, and Gemma's going to be there, and my mind thinks, wouldn't it be great to have sort of 3 or 4 people there, and everyone training together, and it'd just be amazing. And yes, I can't offer the world to people, but what I can guarantee is we have an amazing friendship, and we have an amazing group. And when we do go away, it's not just about the racing. We generally enjoy what we do, and we travel the world together. We get to see these beautiful places, and we spend it in good company. And that for me is a big selling point.
Nice, cool, exciting. Yeah, well, what an offer I'm interested to see, when are you closing things down? Are you just waiting for a certain number of people to apply, or have you got like a deadline, or are you just leaving it kind of open for now?
Yeah, so I've opened it up until this weekend. I may potentially extend it, but I've started booking the calls in, so I've got plenty of calls coming up, which is great. Starting to speak to people as of the end of this week and into next week and the following week. But I appreciate some people have replied and said they're away as well. A lot of people are going on holiday now, but I think I was generally just surprised, one, at the uptake. So things coming in quite quickly, which was great to see, but also the support from people, which was really nice to see. And I think that is something you get in that trail world, but also from people around me as well, saying, "Oh, great to see this." So, yeah, been genuinely overwhelmed by that. And a big thanks to everybody who does send a message, because it does mean a lot.
Awesome. Cool. All right, exciting times ahead. And then I suppose that then this is just seamless, isn't it? Leads us on to that big logo on your t-shirt, because we were going to have a bit of a chat through. We've been fast and furious announcing all of these new upcoming trail events for next year, both in the UK and in Europe. And you touched on it briefly before, like how we can tie in what you guys do with your company and what we're doing at RunThrough and RunThrough Trails. Obviously, there's tons of tie-ins there. Like, we don't even need to go down the rabbit hole of all the ways that we collaborate and work together and can help each other. But it is a pretty exciting time for us at RunThrough Trails with all these new events coming up. And I think, especially off the back of now, I feel like I'm almost going into a bit of a season break with like the running side of things. Had this MRI yesterday, getting a bit of treatment, trying to work out what's going on, fix things. We've had conversations about, let's be patient this year, let's get strong, let's build back up and just kind of get some consistent training under the belt. I've got nothing in the race calendar until February in Gran Canaria. So it gives me a bit of time and space to put a little bit more focus and thought into this side of my life, which is the work side. Not that I wasn't focused on that before, obviously. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on the events that we've got coming up and maybe chat through some of them, because obviously you're a customer in a lot of ways, and it's kind of cool for me because me and you will scan through like UTMB races and other races that are going on and talk about why they appeal and where we might go and where we might travel to. So it's quite interesting to chat to you now from like if you were a customer for these races point of view, how would I be selling them to you and what's cool about them? So yeah, it'd be cool to chat through what we've got coming up.
Yeah, so I'm going to see you in Lady Bower first off, because I'm coming over there and I'm going to do the shorter distance there. That's 25, is it? Is it 25k that I've got myself in for?
If I'm totally honest, so we made a decision a year ago to name the distances by the exact distance they are, which I really like. I stand by, we'll do it forever. It makes all the sense in the world. Don't call a 57k a 50k because it isn't. But it
Yeah.
makes it really hard for me to remember which events have which exact distances without checking. So as we speak, I'm quickly checking. So yeah, Lady Bower 50.
22 suits me even better. So I'll be there for the 22k. Gemma will be there for the 52k, 52 or 54, 52k.
52.
Uh, and I've also got another couple of athletes racing as well, which will be great. So I'm coming over for that. But yeah, I've been absolutely amazed by what you have done personally. I know that the brand and the team have got behind you as well at RunThrough. And you've expanded really quickly into the European market, and you've got lots on the agenda for next year. Yes, it's made you a busy man over the summer, and we need to put a plan in place for that, because that's part of coaching, and it's part of life as well. For the majority of people, you've got to work out how you train around your work and your travel, and that's just part of it. But I'm super excited to see the expansion into Europe, because I loved Sea to Sky. I came down to watch that race. I wasn't part of it, but again had people racing there. I was also part of the other RunThrough Trails events as well. I was actually on the mic over at Tittersworth, so I was part of that one. I'm coming to Lady Bower, and I hope that I can get to a lot of them next year in Europe too. Although it's going to be hard, because you had this goal of I think your goal was to set up 3, I
Yeah,
believe. Was it 3?
it
Yeah,
was 3. Yeah.
it was 3. And it's gone absolutely mental. So maybe you could just start off by telling us, well, where are you going to be in 2025 and what are you launching and when?
Yeah. So, okay, well, we've got the UK stuff and the European stuff, and it's sort of one and the same. It's all this summit series of events, and that differentiates it from the Discover series, which are the more entry level people who want to do the first race, or maybe you're just using them as a training race. So the Discover events are generally shorter distances, less technical, more accessible, really nice first trail race for someone coming from the road, regular run through customer, coming into trails want to try something new. The summit events are generally going to have an ultra distance race included. They will also have sub ultra stuff as well, so shorter than 50k, shorter than 42k, shorter than a marathon. But they tend to be a bit more traily, a bit more technical, and they kind of just like they're more flagship events, I suppose. A bit more time and budget goes into them. They have a bit more character. We spend a bit more time thinking about where they're going to be and really trying to diversify the portfolio of events that we have. So, like I said, in the UK, we've got Lady Bow coming up in October, as well as Box Hill. So, Beat Box Hill is coming actually for the first time with a 20. We're also doing like a 5 and a 10k up and down race on Zigzag Road, which is like a bit of a novelty kind of fun thing, but it should be pretty cool. We did that pre-COVID and it's quite popular, so something that Ben was keen to bring back. But yeah, with Lady Bow, I mean, we're tracking for over 2,000 entries, well over 2,000 entries.
Wow.
We've got a new event village with a load more space. We tweaked both courses; they're significantly better, and they were already class. So like it could be one of the biggest 50Ks in the country this year in terms of numbers of runners. The 22K is going to be having well over 1,000 runners in it, probably more like 1,300. And yeah, just class courses. Like I'm really looking forward to that event. Partnering with the North Face, the same as we did for Sea to Sky at Barmouth. Obviously, a relationship that we're really proud to be a part of with sports shoes as well. And then yeah, Box Hill event will be awesome. It's local to me, Surrey Hills, a lot more accessible for the London crowd and the South Market. And that'll be our second Southern Summit Series event alongside the Fox, which we had back in May, which is also really close to me, around the Guildford area. But we've also had a couple of new events announced for the UK just recently. So my colleague Rob, new event getter extraordinaire, it's never ending. The team is just like, oh my God, Rob, another event. What are you doing to us? But yeah, two brand new ones. I've got to be a bit careful. I'm looking at the website because some are very close to confirmed but not announced yet. So I'm not going to say those, but there are more to come, as always. But Lulworth Cove and the Brecon Beacons. So Brecon Beacons, brand new event for us in Mid Wales next year, which is August 2025. Going to be really cool, like
Nice.
Very unique terrain, very different from like the Snowdonia vibe, but getting people out into the mountains in Wales in a whole different way. Brecon Beacons, to me, I immediately just think SAS because I read all these military books when I was a kid, and it's where they do all their training around Pennyfan and whatever. And then Lulworth Cove, which I believe is February, March time, 2025. South Coast, stunning, maybe not a huge amount of elevation, but very unique coastal paths. Just really, really cool venue, really unique visuals, like amazing views. And that'll tie in quite similarly with another event, which is basically over the line, but I can't say just yet. That'll be coming September 2025. Let's just say also UK South Coast, probably somewhere.
Nice.
So that's going to be pretty smart. And that will be our first ever 50 miler. So we'll be doing a 25k, 50k and a 50 mile at that event as well next September, which that one's TBC. So that's the UK stuff.
Before you go on to the Europe stuff, I've got to tell you something from the trail camp because you'll love it. It's something to do with your Discover series. So at the start of the week, we asked people their experience with trail running. And one of the girls who attended said that her trail experience was Wimbledon Common, one of the run-through races, as Matt's famous advertisement of a trail race, which is very different to yours, James, but falls into kind of that, introduction to trail, right? It's on trail, so I get it. Makes sense. At the end of the weekend, I decided to do where it started and where it ended for every guest and did a little bit of a talk around that. And for that particular runner, I said it started a trail race in Wimbledon Common and it ended up at 2,200 feet above, 2,200 meters above sea level, up at the top of Col de Cou when we were on a run. So I just found it quite funny how, it kind of shows, I guess, where you can go with this, with the trails, that you can start at Wimbledon Common with RunThrough Trails events and you can end up in the European mountains at the top of these amazing places with views all across like the Swiss and French Alps, or, you're going to tell us other venues that you've got, but it shows what you're doing with it and it's working. It is.
Right, from that same group of people, there's an even more extreme example of that because, like Wimbledon, it's not what we think of as like a trail race, but it is trails. It does make sense. It's actually a really nice place to run. I like that event, but it's not like full on trail race. But one of the other participants, I won't say names because I don't know like if they'd want me to or whatever, but she literally signed up for the retreat in Morzine off the back of a marketing email because she signed up for a 5k at Olympic Park. and like we both know who we're talking about. She was great. It was really nice to have her along. She faced a lot of fears and actually like grew a lot throughout the week, and I'm sure it will be something that she'll remember for a long time. And it was cool to share that experience with her. But yeah, she's jogging 5K a couple of days a week. Signed up for a 5K at Olympic Park. Got this email with Lewis and a video saying, "Come to Morty and take part in this trail camp." And she just signed up last minute, and all of a sudden she's there, like not really understanding what she'd signed up for, but also loving it. So yeah, it's crazy. It's cool how it all ties in and how we can expose people to these experiences and share our passions with them. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, and that said person is also coached now by us. So
I thought that
she's
might
working with Gemma.
happen.
Yeah, which is just amazing, isn't it? That's it. Just shows the connection between the two companies and the brands and how it all ties together. I have no doubt she'll be at some of the other trail races that we put on. But that is what I love about this sport. A 5K race has taken them to the mountains, is now taking them to coaching, and now they're thinking, how can I push myself even more? And for me, that journey is just incredible.
Yeah, it's exactly what you want to see. It's what we're all about. Like we always go back to the run through mission of inspiring active nations through running, and it just combines with what you guys are doing so well, and it's working
100%.
because
Yeah.
that is an example of that, right?
But
So
what, yeah, what about the, sorry, I interrupted you there, mate, but what about, I'm not just going to say the exciting ones, because actually when Lulworth Cove come up, I was like, oh my God, that looks amazing. I was like, looks really good. But yeah, what about the European stuff? Because I'm so excited about these
yeah.
venues.
Yeah, so I mean, like what we're trying to do with the European trail stuff is build on what we've done in the UK with these summit events, and like the first question that I've had from a lot of the venues that we've reached out to in these countries, and kind of said, look, can we get a meeting? Can we sit down and have a conversation about putting an event on in your town, in your ski resort, whatever? Here's who we are. Here's why we think we want to do it. Like the first thing they come back with and say, why here? Why Europe? Why this country? Why this venue? What's the goal? And that's kind of a cool place to start because it literally all comes from quite a selfish sort of passion for going after putting on events in places that I love. Like every single one of these places is a place that I've spent time, I've got some connection with. I've run there, I've hiked there, I've skied there, I've lived there, I've got friends who spend time there, I've got some sort of connection. And all of them align in the fact that they're incredible places where I would instantly want to go and run and take part in a race, but they don't have a race, or maybe they don't have a race like of this scale that appeals to this kind of market. And so it just seemed like such an obvious gap, where the answer to those venues when they ask that question is like, why would I not want to come here? And then you just start talking about how cool their part of the world is and how inspiring it is to go there and run on the trails and experience the terrain and see those views and meet the people and get involved with the culture. And they just kind of sit there like, oh, yeah, fair point. I think they've become numb to it because they're just from there and they're so used to it. They don't realize how special these places can be for people who aren't used to, spending all their times in these amazing kind of locations. So, yeah, I mean, the first one that's coming up, and the first European event we'll ever put on is going to be in Girona in Spain. So, just near to Barcelona, northern Spain, near to the French border. Girona for me was a bit of a passion project. So, me, Nicola, and Amelia went on holiday there last year. I'd started watching some cycling and some triathlon and following a few people on YouTube, and just started to realize there's this enormous hub of like cyclists, runners, and triathletes, and just endurance athletes based in Girona because of the weather, because of the culture, because of the acceptance of like the cycling and running scene kind of by the locals and in that part of the world, and the amazing terrain and the amazing trails. So went out there for a holiday, did a bit of running. It was actually just in the build up for the London Marathon, so did a few sessions there as well, and just thought like, how does this place not have a massive trail race? We have to do something here. So yeah, Girona's the first one. What do you know
Nice.
about Girona? Have you ever been across? Have you been there?
The airport. Yeah, I used to fly in to Girona to head up to the French mountains, so it was just easier to fly in there and then head up. And I always on the drive up used to think, oh God, this looks like a nice place. So yeah, I totally get it. And yeah, just it's quite famous, isn't it, for people even training out there, particularly cyclists and triathletes.
Yeah,
It's a really nice place. Climate's a big thing, right? It's just got good weather, so yeah.
beautiful, good weather, cheap food. I mean, Christian Meyer's based out there, like legendary triathlete, um, proper top end elite trail runner now. Took part in UTMB. Unfortunately, had a fall, broke his kneecap. There's probably a more technical
Oh,
term, but yes.
ouch.
So he's recovering from that at the moment. He's been posting it on his social media, so that's quite a big road to recovery for him,
Mm.
unfortunately. So that's a shame. And also Jan Frodeno, who, anyone who knows triathlon knows Jan Frodeno. He would be like, let's just say he's the Eliud Kipchoge, greatest ever when it comes to like ultra distance triathlon and Ironman and all that sort of stuff. He's been based out there for a long time. Both of those guys own like running store, bike store, cafe, restaurant-y type things. And there's this whole it's just a trendy, cool place. And there's just this
Yeah.
cool like community of people who love good coffee, expensive bikes, and trail running. And I'm like, that's right up my alley. That sounds great. So yeah, that's Girona. I mean, to be honest, we could talk about Girona for a little bit because I just came back from there. So we talked about the camp in Morzine. So I left Morzine on the Sunday night. I drove to Dijon. I stayed in a random hotel for a few hours, slept for like 3 hours, got up at 2 a.m, drove back to Calais, got the channel to Folkestone, drove to Gatwick Airport, parked up the car, and then flew from Gatwick to Barcelona, met Ben, and then drove from Barcelona to Girona. So that was a pretty weird day of like of
Three
travel.
countries in a day.
Yeah, it was weird, and we did our normal kind of site visits and met up with the guys from the council, from the venue, the people involved with putting on sporting events. That all went really productively, and I wanted to kind of go and recce the route with Ben. I couldn't run because my knee's bad and like we're dealing with these issues. So got an e-bike and we went off on this adventure. And oh my god, it turned into an absolute farce. Like so, first we lost the car keys because they fell
Oh
into
no.
this crevice in the car and we're in the middle of nowhere and it took us ages to find them. You know when you're going insane, you're like, we haven't moved more than 3 meters. We had the keys 5 seconds ago. It's a massive bunch of keys. Where could they be? And we're like crawling on the floor, searching through the grass. Anyway, so we found the keys. Like, okay, that was ridiculous. Then we go off for this ride. We recce out some of the course. It all goes really well. It looks great. But then we end up coming down this really sketchy single track trail that isn't now part of the route. So don't worry about that. I've got this terrible reputation for saying things aren't that bad when they're awful, but this was bad. So we're not doing that. But I've got this massive e-bike that weighs an absolute ton. Like it must be a 20-kilogram bike. I've got an injured knee. I'm trying to like limp down this trail. Ben's trying to drag it down. We're sliding everywhere. It's all gravelly and loose. It's all overgrown. We're getting stung and torn apart by thorns. But again, that was like kind of run of the mill, not a big deal. Bit of a slog. So we get back to the car. We found the route. We're sort of happy. It's all worked out, but we're starving. We're dehydrated, like classic. It's really hot. And we said, no, let's go and get this drone footage. We need this drone footage. So we drive back down the road. Ben chucks the drone up. We go to film some content. We turn around and he's locked the keys in the car. And we're on
Oh no. Well, I know that feeling.
Right, we're on this
Gemma.
dirt road in the middle of nowhere. I've got my phone. We've got nothing else. We're both in shorts. We're topless. We've got no shoes on. We don't know anybody there. It's a bank holiday in Catalonia,
Oh no.
Spain. So everything's closed. So Ben immediately just picks up a rock, and I'm like, mate, just stop. Don't.
Don't do that.
I don't want to deal with that. Taking it back. So we have this big debate, and we're googling which window do you smash, and which is the easiest way to break into a car. And we end up finding this locksmith in Girona. I get his mobile number. I WhatsApp him. He answers. He calls back. We're going back and forth trying to work it all out. He charges us an absolute fortune. Like we got completely ripped off. But anyway, he came
He
and he
did
let
it.
us in, and we got the keys back. So we're like, okay, cool. That was good. So we head back. And then the next day we rent another e-bike. We head out and we got to recce this entire section of the route. But my knee's blown up from that day. It's really swollen and I'm like, I can't do anything. It'd be stupid to do anything. Ben, you're going to have to do it. And he's like, that's fine. I can ride 80K. I'll smash it out. It'll be absolutely fine. We've got to do it. So we get this, we've got 2 e-bikes. It's like a full pit crew. We go and drop him off in this spot and he heads off. And what should have taken him like an hour ends up taking 3 hours. I ring him and he's been pushing the bike for 2K up this single track like gully. He's not happy. He's roasting hot. He's taken no food and water with him because
Oh no.
he's bent, like he's got half a bottle on his bike. So that was an absolute slog. And then he realizes the battery on the bike that we've got from the higher place is on 30% and now it's on 10%. It's going to run out. So I have to drive all the way back to the hotel, load the other e-bike into the car, which in itself is a mission because it's massive and the car is tiny. So I'm taking all the wheels off, faffing around with it, drive back out and meet him. And as he's descending down to where I'm going to meet him, he has a massive crash. He comes off the bike. His shorts get ripped off. He's lying on the gravel on his back. Like everything's hanging out. His hands are bleeding. His knees are bleeding. He's been stung on the face by a wasp. Like his bike's in bits. He finally makes it down to me, like bleeding from everywhere. Then we get the drone up to film a bit more running because he's just like, no, come on, let's bash it out. He puts the drone on follow mode. He jogs off down the road. The drone follows him straight into a tree, collapses, crashes into a tree, falls out of the tree. So the drone's like knackered. Like, okay, right, come on, crack on. So I give him the other bike that's now got a charged battery. He heads off down this trail, and within 100 meters, the tire explodes. He hits this sharp rock. He comes off again. I've got to go and find him. Now we've got to swap the wheels on the bikes. It just carries on like that. Then he has a thorn hook onto his finger while he's riding along, and tear down the inside of his finger, all through like the webbing between his fingers, and it is just like bleeding a lot. So then I've got to find a pharmacy to find iodine and bandages on a bank holiday in the middle of nowhere. It carries on. It was absolutely ridiculous. We had like 4 encounters with the police in the space of 48 hours when I don't think I've spoken to a policeman for a decade. Whatever. And more
the story behind the event. This is the bit that nobody ever sees. It's like, oh, this event in Girona was amazing. How did they find this? And then it's like, well, the story to them finding this event is very interesting.
Well, the final culmination was like, we've got it all reckoned out. We've worked it all out. We've got a 20 odd K, a 50K, and a 100K race. We've seen all of it. We know it works. It's incredible. The event is going to be amazing. We're absolutely buzzing. We've got this last section, which is the only bit we haven't seen. It's going dark. We've got 10 minutes of daylight, and he just gets the bike out the back, and he goes, I'm just going for it. And he just shoots off. No lights, no helmet, no anything. It's going dark. I drive all the way around to meet him. We meet up. Everything else has gone wrong. And then in this moment, he rides down this trail with like a look of pure elation on his face. I come down the road. We meet at the exact same point at the exact perfect time. We've seen every foot of the course. No one's died. Everyone's still alive. Like, it all works. It all goes. This one bit that we thought wouldn't go does go. It would have killed the entire route. We'd have to go back to the drawing board. We meet up. We're like high-fiving, so happy. And then I turn around and I've closed the keys in the car again.
No way.
No. But then we check every door. Everyone's locked. And there was one door we haven't checked. And we both just look at each other, pull the handle of this door, and it opens. And we just start screaming. Like, my heart's racing just thinking about it. So, yeah. And then we went for a pizza and a drink and went to bed. So it was a cool trip. And that kind of shines a bit of a light.
That's your definition of cool.
Yeah, it was absolutely brutal. It was brutal. But like, it made it so much
Oh my God.
dialed in. And afterwards, Ben was like, I just miss this. I don't get to do this stuff as much as I want to anymore. Like, hands-on, like, I've got 2 days to work out 100K of route. But yeah, it was really cool. But that event, just to come back to it and kind of hurry things along a bit, Girona's famous for its gravel riding. It's like these beautiful yellow gravel roads all through the mountains, all around the city. So we're looking at basically running on those gravel roads now. So it's kind of trail crossed with road. It's not road by any means. It's all off-road. I mean, whatever. In the 100K, there might be 8K of road, which is totally normal. But it's these amazing, Gemma would love it. It's like this runnable gravel service road type terrain, a few bits of technical trail, but it's runnable, undulating, 3,000 meters of elevation gain and loss over 100K, stunning views, perfect weather. It's going to be so much fun. Same for the 25 and the 50K as well.
Nice.
So situated like May time, just the perfect place to go and get that hot weather stimulus, not too technical, not too much elevation, fast runners courses. It's going to be an absolute dream. Really excited about that one.
And I guess one of my questions around, before we go on to like the next ones, because there's a long list of these events to come in 2025, particularly in Europe. But you mentioned Gemma there and said, oh, Gemma would love it. And obviously we will start to plan some of these events into her race calendar. But if people are thinking like, oh, I quite fancy that, or, I quite like that, who is this trying to appeal to? And also, is it like a series like the Golden Trail series? Is it like a UTMB thing? What is the vision for these RunThrough Trails events in Europe? Because I think it's an amazing concept. I'd love to hear the thoughts behind the vision from your perspective.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, from a vision point of view, our mission statement is inspiring you to live every step of your journey. And that the idea is the times where I probably feel best is when I'm running along a trail and I look up and like, I'm feeling good. I'm enjoying the run. I realize I'm in this unbelievable place. There's no one around me. And it's just that moment of like, whatever it is, flow state or self-actualization, or, you're doing something difficult. You're challenging yourself. You're pushing yourself in a difficult kind of environment at high elevation with a load of altitude involved, or maybe it's hot, maybe it's freezing cold, or whatever it might be. But you're also just in this incredible place that doesn't even seem real. and you just have this out of body moment of like, this is what life's about. Like, I genuinely just feel alive in this moment right now. And I just want to get as many people to experience that as I possibly can, because that's the thing that like
Nice.
inspires me to do what we do. So yeah, the tagline of what we're trying to do is literally just run inspired, just inspiring people to come out to these places and have these experiences. Target
Love it.
market is very much that run through market. Like it's everybody, like 18 to 70 from the UK and Europe, people who value health and wellness, people who want to challenge themselves and achieve self-actualization through taking on difficult goals and doing things that they don't know if they can do. Because if you take on a challenge and you know you can complete it, is it really a challenge? So we want to put people under a little bit of pressure to test themselves, because that's where real change and experience happens. And it's focused on both seasoned trail runners and elite runners, as well as newcomers seeking activities that allow them to just explore these stunning locations, but with a little bit of purpose built in with that travel side of things. I mean, it's a market of people who have to be somewhat affluent, because not everyone can just fly to Girona to do a trail race, but also like flights are pretty cheap nowadays, and our races
Yeah.
are going to be pretty affordable and accessible. So, there'll be a big market of people who maybe can't get into the UTMB races or can't afford to pay that price, or don't sign up 9 months in advance when they all seem to sell out, who might be interested. We also want to tie it in with a load of educational stuff like the podcast, like working with you guys at New Levels, and providing as much information as we can to prep people before the event. And we want to offer a range of different distances. So they're all going to have something around a sort of 10K distance, which is going to be more of like an up and down or vertical race, a bit more of a unique experience based on the location. And then your standard sort of 20-ish, 50-ish, 100-ish is kind of what we're going after for most of them.
Nice. I think that sums it up really nicely. Like the run inspired, simple but effective, but the storytelling behind it is amazing, and how you portray that to the audience. I think everyone can almost visualize themselves there, and I definitely get that feeling when I'm up there in the mountains, even on bad days. Like you can always draw something from it, and you can always get something from it. And then, as you say, that the audience, I think, is brilliant, because there are a lot of new people coming to trails, like, and people who aren't experienced, as we mentioned earlier with the trail camp, people throwing themselves in, but then tying that into education and making sure people are best prepared as possible, I think is really important. So I think that's a really nice way to tie it all together. So what are the other ones then, James? So rattle them off. So we've got Girona, we've got the backstory behind Girona.
A longer story, because it was just too ridiculous not to tell. What I might try and do is, I don't know, maybe in the description of the YouTube video, or whatever, I've got a couple of pictures that are just absolutely hilarious of Ben's hands after that. Give it a bit of context, because he's a mess. So yeah, the other event. So Girona's the first one in May. Straight off the back of Girona, the following weekend, we're heading out to Interlaken in Switzerland, which we are literally announcing this week. So it will have been announced by the time the podcast comes out. Absolutely stunning location. This was one that Justin pushed quite hard for, somewhere that I had visited and somewhere that he spent quite a bit of time. Oh, it's just beautiful. It's this famous trail up the Hadegat. I'm probably pronouncing that really poorly, but this stunning ridge line. Interlaken is this very touristy city based between these two huge, stunning lakes in Switzerland. You've got views of massive peaks like the Jungfrau and the Eiger in the region, lots of 4,000 plus meter peaks. Beautiful, well marked, pristinely maintained trails like Switzerland always offers. Up this incredible ridge where these views are absolutely mind blowing. Like the content will be coming out this week from our trip and some of the drone footage. It's just stunning. And because that's coming straight off the back of the Girona event, with that one, we're not doing 100K. So we're doing like a 10K up and down race on the Friday evening. And then on the Saturday, we're doing a 20-ish and a 50-ish. Again, it's going to be fairly runnable trails, not massively technical, but a good amount of elevation. And it's just absolutely stunning. It's such a cool spot. So yeah, that's Interlaken.
Following from Interlaken?
Yeah, so from Interlaken, then we get to come back for a couple of weeks to the UK Gloom before heading back out to Europe. And then we're straight into Morzine. So Morzine was the first one to be confirmed.
Nice.
And yeah, Morzine, like, I'm really excited for. So those that have heard of Morzine, which I imagine a lot of people have, really famous for skiing in the winter and mountain biking in the summer. And there's already a really good trail race, the Trail to Hauptthor, which is put on by Bruno, who's the director of animations out there with the tourism office in Morzine. I raced at that this year. I know Justin's taken part quite a few times. It's a really good race, but what we wanted to do was position an event earlier in the year to set people up ahead of the big summer season for the big races at UTMB, etc., and add on some ultra distance races. So that one is going to have an up and down race, which I know that you're talking about taking part in. It's
It's
going to
on my
start
list.
on the town square in Morzine, and it goes up the Point de Neon, which you can see basically the entire route from town. So it's an out and back. I think it's about 12k, 900 meters up and down. So that's going to be really fun, finishing with a bit of an après trail party on the square afterwards. And then we've got 100k, which has a lot of elevation. That's just over 6,000 meters. Incredible route, like unbelievable. You will have seen the entire area if you can complete that route. The trails are stunning, but it will be challenging. And a 50k and a 25k as well. Again, I'm saying 25 because I can't remember the exact distance, but in that sort of region, 23-ish. So yeah, and the vibe with that one is very much European Alps. It's going to be similar terrain to what we see in Chamonix around UTMB, like rocky, alpine stuff up high, nice buffed out trails through the woods. Yeah, classic sort of French ski resort style stuff. So that'll be really cool.
And I can vouch for Morzine. It's amazing. I've just been spending a lot of time running around there. So good.
Yeah, it's class, isn't it? The views are incredible.
Yeah.
I know it's like almost the foothills of the Alps. It's closer to Geneva than the Central Alps, getting out towards Chamonix and towards the Mont Blanc Massif. So slightly smaller stuff, but you get the views of the big stuff as well, which I often think is actually even better.
Yeah.
And then straight from Morzine, we'll be driving over to Italy. So it's out to Pila Aosta. So Pila is a small ski resort above the town of Aosta in the Aosta Valley.
Nice.
And this is a valley that runs perpendicular to the Chamonix Valley, just on the opposite side of Mont Blanc. It's surrounded by the Monte Rosa range. Absolutely stunning. Takes you basically from Courmayeur out to Turin, is where the valley is situated. It's just a bit of a hidden gem. Like, used to go there all the time when we lived in Chamonix. The food is unbelievable. The coffee is as good as it will ever be. The light is always gorgeous. Like, I don't know, no matter what time of day or year it is in Italy, there's this beautiful, like, amber glow to the light. It's just one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And this particular place has just got massive mountains, big elevation, and incredible trails. There's already a famous event there called the Tour de Géant, which has just happened recently, like really long, I want to say 300k, like multi-day stuff. So we're going in and doing obviously our regular kind of format, uphill race, 25k, and probably something that's in the mid 40s for that one, actually, because there's so much elevation. It's hard to squeak out a 50k. So we might do more of like a mountain marathon vibe for that one.
Nice.
But yeah, amazing spot. And then following on from that, we've got Engelberg. So Engelberg is going to be the hidden gem. I don't think many people will have heard of Engelberg. It's really famous as a stop on the free ride ski world tour. It's famous with, skiers who want to ski big mountains in deep snow and jump off massive cliffs and ski massive lines really quickly. And it's kind of got this like kind of characteristic within that scene. It's really well known for that. But it doesn't have really a trail running scene, but it's got 500 kilometers of some of the best trails you've ever seen with the most stunning, picturesque views ever. Like, it sounds like I'm over-egging all of these places, but Engelberg is unbelievable. You drive into the valley and it is like you've entered heaven. It's a joke. It's these like rolling green fields at the bottom, massive mountains, snow-capped glaciers, perfect trails, groomed. Like someone's gone and built them with a shovel. But there's 500 kilometers and they're all signposted with brand new shiny wooden signposts. Switzerland's just
proper Switzerland then.
Yeah,
proper Switzerland.
It's ridiculous, man. So really excited. Engelberg is going to be something special. I think even though these other places have got bigger names, and I think somewhere like Girona, somewhere like Aosta, somewhere like Morzine will be huge. There's no question in my mind. I think Engelberg is going to be the one that people come to. It might take a bit longer to grow, but that might end up being our kind of series finale because the place is that special and the courses are that good. That event is going to be something special.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's Engelberg. And then on to the last one, which is yet to be announced, but I feel like we'll just say it because it is all confirmed, in Locarno. So Locarno is just on the Swiss side of the Italian border, over by the Italian lakes in the north of Italy, south of Switzerland. And we picked that spot because when me and Nicola were traveling around Europe, living in the van, one of our friends, German Mike, who is German, took us there for a hike and we got a bit of a sunset and it was unbelievable. We got accommodation through this couch surfing website and we thought this guy was going to be a bit weird and he took us out to this shack and he just let us use his house and it's on top of this ridge on this field overlooking the lake. I remember we were listening to Oasis with a bonfire going, just thinking like, how is this place real? And we went up for a hike and we saw the stars and I just thought this place is spectacular. And so we went after it based off that. And after we started conversations with them, they turned around and said, well, actually, Golden Trail World Series is holding their World Series final here this year, and it's a one-off event, but we'd like to keep that event going after that. And that's what we're going to kind of end up doing. So we had no idea the Golden Trail thing was going to be there, but it's cool to think, great minds think alike. So that event happens end of October this year for the Golden Trail World Series final. And then we're going to then hold a very similar event every year after that, as obviously a RunThrough Trails Global Summit Series event. So yeah, 3 in Switzerland, 1 in Italy, 1 in Spain, 1 in France. So that's 6 for 2025, and just got to plan them all now.
Incredible. Well, the planning's got in. It's just, amazing to see. I mean, I keep saying it. I'm super excited to get to some of these events next year. I've seen the hard work that's gone into even just sourcing the venues and going out there and doing the recce's and stuff. And yeah, big kudos to you and the team for doing that. I'm sure a lot of people are going to get involved from the RunThrough community. And as it grows, a lot of people come from far and wide, which I know is part of the mission at RunThrough as well, not just to inspire an active nation to go beyond that and make sure people around the world know of RunThrough and RunThrough Trails. So yeah, looking forward to it, mate. Well, thanks for bringing me up to speed. It helps to clarify things in my brain, because I keep seeing them all pop up. I'm like, God, this is mad.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I can talk about it all day because it is just so exciting, and I really think there's so much potential for it. But at the end of the day, it's going to be really well organised, really smooth events in some of the best places you could ever imagine. And if you've run a RunThrough race before in the UK, you can expect that same level of delivery and care from the staff and all the things that we do best that makes us who we are as a company. And we're just taking that overseas, and hopefully we can get a load of brand new brand advocates from all these other countries and start building communities in all these other places, because there's a lot of trail runners out there that we want to be involved with. So yeah, no, mega exciting. And yeah, thanks for letting me talk about it, because it is something I'm thinking about a lot at the minute. So that probably brings us pretty much to a close. I mean, I guess for you now, mate, what are you looking at for the back end of this year? Have you got anything else coming up personally in terms of races in 2024, or is that it now?
I'll be at Lady Bower having a bit of fun, of course. But yeah, a bit of quiet time, bit of reflection, and we'll be out in Valencia Marathon as well, supporting a lot of our marathon runners, which I'm really looking forward to, because it's always a good one. But yeah, bit of quiet time and well-needed downtime as well.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? You got to empty the stress buckets, as you like to say, and
definitely
refocus. So yeah, amazing.
100%. Yeah.
Cool. All right, mate.
Real.
Lots of exciting stuff happening. Thanks as always. Nice to have a catch up. Nice to chat. Although I feel like we have just chatted for every day for the last month anyway. So yeah, excited to see who you recruit on this.
Your training partners, eh? Your training partners. No, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, mate. I know we spoke a lot over the past few months, but it's nice to, bring it all to life and just give it to the wider audience as well, an insight into what's going on.
Totally. All right, cool. Well, this weekend we've got coming up it's totally not relevant for trails at all, but I know that Kieran listens to the show, so I'm going to give him a shout out. Kieran, who works at RunThrough, one of your athletes as well, recently ran a solid PB 15:15.
15:15, yeah, good run.
And he's leading the charge for the RunThrough squad at the road relays. We're competing in the road relays on Saturday in Aldershot. Unfortunately, I was going to be running and I can't because I'm injured, and also George was going to be running, but he also has a bad knee. So the team's taken a little bit of a hit. The guys are pretty confident they can get it done, so I'm going to go down and support and see how they get on with that. And yeah, other than that, mate, I'm going to see you at Lady Bower. Justin's coming over. He's going to be there as well.
Yes, he mentioned that, yeah.
So yeah,
looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it. All right, man.
Well, thanks for your time. Lovely to speak, and thanks to everyone for listening and making it all the way to the end of the episode. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with the next episode. Speak to you all soon.